Hi everybody, in this video I'm going to show you how to make a Space Invaders game similar to this one. You can see I have a spaceship sprite that can move around and can shoot a laser at invaders. You get points for blowing up invaders, and as the game goes on it gets more difficult. And the enemies start increasing speed and shooting back, and if you get hit you lose. And if they run into you, you also lose. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is just remove the cat here and just change the cat to a spaceship. And it's way too large, so I'll just make it a lot smaller. And I'll start by setting up some code for getting it to move. Since this has a bunch of different levels and a lot of different things are going to happen on different levels, I'll probably end up using a lot of broadcasts to start levels and control what happens. So what I'll do is, when the green flag is clicked, I'll just broadcast start. And that'll, I probably won't use the green flag for too many things, just because so many different things are going to have to happen at different times. I'd rather have more control over when they start, and so I'll frequently be using broadcasts to tell things when to start. So when the rocket sprite receives start, it's going to start doing its things. I know a couple of things right from the beginning I'm going to need. I might as well set up these variables now. I know I want a level variable and a score variable. So I'll just set those up now and initialize the state of my program, which just means I'm going to set up how I want my program to start. I want level to be 1, and I want score to be 0. And then I'll set up some controls for the rocket. I will use a forever if. So inside my forever loop, if, and I want there to be options for how to control it. Some people like to use up, down, left, right arrows. Some people like to use WASD. So you can easily accommodate both by saying, well, I only really need left and right. So I'll use A and D, A, and left. And I can just put an OR block here. So if A is pressed or if left is pressed, they'll do the same thing, which will be change x by -10. If the D key is pressed, or if the right arrow is pressed, it will change x by +10. So you can see I have a rocket that moves. Okay. The next thing I should add is some enemies. So the enemy I used a robot sprite, and you saw that there were a lot of enemies. I'm not going to create individual sprites for all of these enemies. So let me just find one. I think that one was called Robot. I'll shrink that as well. And what I'll do with the robot is at the beginning, I'm going to set up a bunch of data, and then I'm actually just going to hide the original robot, because what I'm going to be doing is cloning it. I'm going to be making a whole bunch of clones of this original robot, and it isn't actually going to be the one, this original sprite isn't going to be the one that shows up on the screen. I'll be making clones. I'll just be making a bunch of copies of it instead. So when the game starts, what I want to do is repeat a bunch of times, make a clone of itself. I want to create a clone of itself. A bunch of times. At first, I'll just do it 8 times, and then hide. And what I can do then is when it starts as a clone, this is the one that's going to show up. The clones will all show up. When it starts as a clone, I'll have it go to the top left corner. I already have my original robot there, so the go to XY is already correct. I'll have it point in the direction I want it to go, and then start doing stuff. What I want it to do, for now, I just want it to move the way I had them move in the example. Which was, it moves across the screen, and then when it reaches an edge, it goes down and starts heading in the other direction. So if touching edge, change Y, I'll try -40. And point in direction plus 180, which is just the opposite direction. Because if it was pointing to the right, I just want to have it point to the left. And it does allow you, you'll see 90 plus 180 would be 270. If I type in 270, it does point to the left. 270 and -90 are the same thing. It even auto-corrected this to -90. 270 and -90 are actually the same in Scratch. So I'll point in direction. Oh, I already have a plus sign. Current direction plus 180. So let's see what the enemies do. Right now they're working, but they're spaced way too close together. They also flip upside down. So I'll stop them flipping upside down by clicking the left-right arrows. And they're packed a little too close together. And that's because when the clones are being created, they're being created all at the same time. This repeat is happening way too quickly. So I'm going to put a little bit of wait time in there. Let me just try 1 second. And that should be better. Okay, so I already know though that this, well, This isn't really going to work as I try to change the game. As I try to increase the speed of the enemies, as I try to increase the number of enemies, as I try to make them spawn faster and start just showing up more frequently, these numbers aren't going to work. Repeat 8. Well, if I want to make more than 8 enemies, 8 isn't going to work. Create clone is fine, but wait 1 second. If I want them to come out faster, this number's not going to work either. And move 5 steps. If I want them to move faster, this number's not going to work. So I'm just going to create a bunch of variables for now. Nothing's going to change yet, but later I can change these variables. And when I change the variables, it'll change how the aliens act, which will be really useful for creating new levels. Because if I say this number here, 8, that's just the number of times it creates a clone. So that is, I'm going to need to do a little bit of, I'll need to change up my repeat here. What I'll have to do is repeat until. Get rid of this. I'm going to get a repeat, a repeat until. And I'm going to repeat until some variables are equal. So I'll need an equal sign. I don't have the variables yet, but I'll just put all this back together. The variables I think I'm going to have is I will have an alien count, just count how many aliens there are, and alien max, which will just be the number that I'm trying to get up to. Now I'm going to repeat until alien count equals alien max. At the beginning, I'm going to set alien count to 0, and I'm going to set alien max, I just want 8, to 8. Now, this is going to do the same thing. This is going to do the exact same thing as last time. It's still just going to count to 8. It's going to repeat until my count, which starts at 0, equals my max, which is 8. So it's just going to repeat 8 times as long as I increase the alien count. 1 every time this repeat happens. Because what will happen is first alien count will be 0. It'll create a clone. It'll increase the count to 1. It'll wait a second, create another clone, increase the count to 2. Wait a second, create another clone, increase the count to 3, wait another second, and keep doing that until the count is 8. And when the count is 8, count will be equal to max. It'll be maxed out. It'll stop making aliens. You can see if I do that. Last time it made 8 aliens. This time, let's see how many there are. When it stops making them, it stopped making new ones, and there were 8. So I can hide these variables now. I just don't need to be visible. So that, while it did the exact same thing, is much more flexible, because later when I want to start adding more levels, what I can do is, to make it harder, I can increase the number of aliens very easily by just changing the max and repeating this whole process. Another thing that I should change now while I'm working on setting all of this up is alien speed. Right now the speed is 5. That's fine. I can set the speed to 5 at the beginning and move, but I always want my aliens to move according to the alien speed. Again, that's not going to change anything right now, but later, when I change the speed, the aliens will go faster. And that also allows me to change how fast they appear, because right now this wait time is making it wait in between appearances. When they spawn based on this wait time. Well, I can use a little bit of math. I can just do some number divided by the speed. Okay, right now I want the speed to be 1. So if it's 5, I can actually do 5 divided by 5, and it will be 1. But then later when the speed increases, let's say the speed is 10, if this was 10, 5 divided by 10 is half a second. So they'll come out way faster. So if I increase the speed of the aliens, I can also increase the rate that they spawn. So all of this together is going to work to give me more flexible levels. I can create more levels very easily later. So before I do that, I am going to create some levels really soon, but before I do that, I should add one more feature, which is the ability to shoot the aliens with a laser, because if you can't do that, you're not really playing this game at all. The whole point is to blow up all the aliens, and that's how you win the round. So I'll need a laser. I'm just going to draw a new sprite. It'll just be a rectangle. Make sure that your rectangle is centered over the center point. Or you could have issues with if your rectangle isn't centered, you can have issues with its movement. I'll just make it a red rectangle. I'll shrink it. That should be good. And what this will do is at the beginning, just like the aliens actually. At the beginning, it's going to hide, and I'll just be creating clones. So I want this to show up when the rocket, when the player presses. I like the idea. You can probably put this code kind of inside any forever loop, really, because it's just going to be broadcasting a message. But I like keeping my player controls with the rocket. So I'm going to put it here. If space key is pressed, that's going to be my shoot key. That is not space key. If space key is pressed, I'm just going to broadcast a message. And in fact, you know what? I'm not even going to keep this in my main forever loop. This could cause a problem later because this is always running, and I think I'm going to have to put a wait. I'm going to have to put some wait time in here. I don't want my laser to be constantly spamming. I'll actually show you what the error looks like. So I'll leave it here for now, and then I'll just move it later. If space key is pressed, I'm going to broadcast a message. I'll just say laser. And later I'm going to add some wait time, but I'll hold off on that for now. What the laser will do is when it receives the message laser, create a clone. When it starts as a clone, go to the rocket, which is sprite 1. I'm going to rename this rocket. I'm going to rename this one laser. So when it starts as a clone, it's going to go to the rocket, show, and then I just want it to move until it reaches an edge or until it goes away. I'll have something else make it go away if it hits an alien, but for now I'll just say repeat until touching edge. I just want it to change its Y. I want it to go pretty fast, so I'll say 20. And then when it's done moving, I want to delete the clone. So you can see what's happening is if I tap space once, it shoots once. But if I hold it, it kind of just doesn't a stream of lasers, which isn't really what I want. It'll be too easy to hit the alien sprites. So that's why I'm going to go back here, and I want to add some wait time so that you can't just spam lasers. I'll do 0.5 seconds. Now the problem with that is it actually restricts other things. If I try to move, whenever I shoot, it stops moving, so the movement can get glitchy. I don't really want my movement and my shooting to be related like that. I don't want them to block each other. So I'm going to take this out, put it inside its own forever loop with its own starter. And this can just run forever. This doesn't need to wait for anything. Suppose I could be when it receives start if I want to be consistent, but it doesn't really matter as much. So now I can move and shoot lasers whenever I want without interrupting my movement. And the lasers, they're fine for now. I do need to add one additional feature to the robot, which is that if it's touching a laser, it should go away. If touching laser, I want it to go away. However, before it goes away, I want to broadcast some information. I actually want to get rid of the laser, because I don't want the laser to continue through and hit a bunch more aliens. So I'm going to say delete laser. Also, I'm going to increase the score, because the score will be useful not only just for the sake of providing information to the user for how many aliens you blew up, but also the score will determine moving on to the next level. So if I keep score, I can use that number to determine when to start the next level. So I need to keep track. And then after broadcasting delete laser and increasing the score, I'm going to delete the clone, because that alien clone, that robot sprite clone, is has to go away when it gets hit. And the laser, when it receives the message delete laser, I want it to go away. Okay, so now I have aliens. If I hit them, they go away. Also, you'll notice if I shoot one on like a second or third row, the laser doesn't continue on and go through aliens and hit more. I don't want one shot to be able to hit too many, because it'll make the game too easy. So that's why this delete laser thing is here. Okay, so now I have like a lot of the basic functions. But you'll see I just destroyed all the aliens, and it didn't really do anything. So I really want to be able to create additional levels. That's what I'll do back in the robot sprite. Because I set up all those variables, this should be really easy. When I receive start, I can just duplicate the start code and change this to a new message. I'll just use the level number when I receive 2. When I receive 2, I think I'll add a little bit of wait time, so there's some wait time in between levels. And then I'm going to change a bunch of these numbers. I think I want the aliens to move a little faster. I want there to be a few more of them. Oh, I'm going to set the count to 0. Sorry. I'm going to set the original count to 0 and the maximum count to 16. So what happens is, as it creates new ones, as it creates new clones, this number goes up, and then it stops creating new ones when it reaches this number, the max. Right? Because it says repeat until count equals max. That's why I start count at 0, because every time it creates a new clone, it increases the count, and then it waits a little bit. So every time it creates a new clone, it increases the count. When it counts up to 16, it'll stop. So let's try that. They should be a little bit faster, and there should be more of them. All right, so round 1 should be pretty easy. But round 2, I didn't broadcast anything. So round 2 didn't start because I didn't broadcast anything. So I'm keeping most of my sort of main game control code with the rocket sprite. So what I'll do is if score equals 8, because there were 8 enemies in the first level. If score equals 8, and because I don't want it to continue broadcasting after it starts the next level. I just want it to broadcast once. So what I'll do is if score equals 8 and level equals 1, I'll have it change level by 1 and broadcast level. So when it's level 1 and score equals 8, it'll increase the level and broadcast the new level, which will be 2. Because I have this and here, it's not going to keep broadcasting 2 over and over again. So that's why I had to add this right here. Level won't be 1 anymore. Level will be 2. So this will no longer be true, and it'll stop broadcasting. If it kept broadcasting, it would sort of try to restart level 2 over and over and over again. I don't want it to do that. I just want it to start level 2 once. So now I should be able to actually move on. If I can ever hit that thing, I'll just let them come to me. Now there should be a little wait time, and now there should be more enemies, and there should be a lot more this time. And they're moving a little bit faster. You can see there are twice as many. Okay, so as you can see, it's not that difficult to add additional levels. To add a new level, you can just, if I want to add a third level, when I receive 3, increase the speed even more, increase the count even more. Oh, sorry. Count's always supposed to start at 0. Count is always supposed to start at 0. That's the starting count, and then you keep count as you create more. The maximum is the one I want to increase, so that'll be 24. And I can go back to my control code, and if I started with 8 aliens and then there were 16 aliens, so 8 plus 16 is 24. If score equals 24 and level equals 2, change level by 1, broadcast level. Hey, look, my level 3 just started. And you can see they're a lot faster and there are a lot more of them. Now at this point, and this is a much more difficult level, something should happen if they run into me, but nothing is happening. So what I'll do is I'll go to my control code for the rocket, and I'll say if touching robot I'll broadcast a new message. Game over. And I should create a game over sprite. The game over sprite will hide at the beginning. I'll also make sure it can hide when it receives start. The reason I want to have two different ways to do that is there could be another way to restart the game. You could always have it start on the green flag click, but maybe within the game you could also have it when you lose, wait a few seconds and then restart by broadcasting start, or have a button to click to restart and that kind of thing within the game. So it's worth setting up both just so that you have flexibility. So it's going to hide at the beginning no matter how it starts. And then when it receives the message game over, it'll show and stop all. So now if there's a collision, the game should end. And I'll let that run just so you can see it works. Actually, let me just move the rocket for a minute. You can see when they collide, the game ends. I'll put the rocket back. Now, it's almost over. There's just a few things to add to make the game have a little bit more functionality. I'm going to move this to the side so that those aren't bunched together. And it would be a little bit more interesting if the aliens could shoot back. So maybe in the first level that would be too difficult. The first level is supposed to be easy. But I think what I'll do is I'll create a new laser. This will be an enemy laser. I'll just duplicate the original laser. So I just made a duplicate of laser 1 and I'll call it enemy laser. And the enemy laser will be really similar. Right? They're going to hide at the beginning, and when it receives its own message, this will be a different message, enemy laser, it'll create a clone. When it receives delete enemy laser, the clone will go away. Actually, I don't know if I'll ever need that. Because if it collides with the rocket, you actually lose. So there's really no need for that. It doesn't need to go away when it collides with something. But what I do need it to do, it doesn't need to go away when it collides with another sprite, at least. What I do want it to do, though, is when it starts as a clone, I do want it to go to a specific spot. I need to keep track of that spot. This is a little bit tricky. It can't just go to I can't just use the go to. I can't use this go to robot because there's so many clones of robots. It might show up for all of them, or maybe the original. I don't actually remember which. I think it shows up for the. Yeah, it's a little bit. It could get a little bit tricky. I'm not going to use that. Instead of using the go to position and telling it to go to a robot, what I will do is keep track of which robot generated it, because somehow there has to be a way. So I'll get a go to XY. This is going to be, the X and Y will be filled in by variables. I'm going to have something generate enemy laser X And I'll have to have something generate enemy laser Y. I can just hide those. Those need to be visible. They just need to be used here for the X and Y of where the enemy laser will start. So when it starts as a clone, it's going to go to those spots, but something has to generate those spots. That is going to be the enemy. The enemy will generate those. So back in the enemy sprite, in its main code for when it starts as a clone, when it starts running its forever loop, I'm going to have it, depending on the level, I'll say if level equals 2, or level equals 3, I'm going to randomly decide if it generates a laser. That will be, I'll have to do if some random number equals, I'll just say 1, right? If some random number equals 1, that means I'm going to need to pick a random number. So what it'll do is it'll randomly generate a number. I'll just say one number between 1 and 100. This loop is running a lot. It's running many times per second, so 1 out of 100 will happen pretty often. That might even be too difficult, but I'll see how it works out. If it picks a random number, and that random number between 1 and 100 equals 1, it'll set enemy laser X, and it'll set enemy laser Y. And I want the X and Y to be, remember this is code for a clone. This is when it starts as a clone. That specific clone has its own X and has its own Y. So I want the enemy laser X to be that X. I want the enemy laser Y to be that Y. Then I'll broadcast the message enemy laser. And the enemy laser will start as a clone. It'll go to that enemy laser X and enemy laser Y. It'll show up, it'll start moving. Now here's one change I have to make. Notice it just spawned and it started at the top. It's going up. I need it to start at the top and it went up. I need it to go down. So I'm going to do minus, and I don't want it to go quite as fast as the player laser, I don't think. I want you to be able to dodge it. It's going to be part of the challenge of the game. So instead of changing 20 every time, I'll have it change 10. So let's see how that works. First I need to get through. Oh, why is this robot still hovering around here? I'm not sure. Okay, now in this level, notice that they start randomly shooting lasers. And they're shooting pretty often. One in 100 is not too rare when something's repeating many times per second. So I think I'll make just a couple more changes. I want to take that laser. I'm going to make the enemy laser a slightly different color. I'll just get the paint bucket. I'll change it to green. For the enemy. And when you get hit with it, you're supposed to lose. So I'm going to say if touching enemy laser, broadcast game over as well. So now you can also lose if you get hit by the enemy laser. So there isn't really that much more I'd like to add. I think it would be kind of nice to add a little bit more, like one more sprite to give a little bit more game information. So I'm going to have a different, I'll have a different image for sort of each stage. I'll say like wave 1 for the beginning. I'll create another new costume. I could actually just duplicate this. So for level 2, I'll say wave 2. For level 3, I'll say wave 3. And then at the end of the game, if you've made it through all of the waves, I'll say you survived. And at the beginning, like a lot of these, well, at the beginning, I'm just going to have it show. I'll switch the costume to the beginning costume briefly. I'll have it wait a second and then hide. When it receives the message 2, it'll switch costume again, but this time in costume 2. Show, wait a second and hide. And I should also add a show to the beginning here, just in case it was hiding from a previous time playing the game. Not what I meant to do. And then when it receives the message 3, change to costume 3. When it receives the message 4, which doesn't exist yet, 4, change to costume 4, which is the win costume. So if you make it all the way through, you win. And I will have it stop the game. So now you have wave 1. You have wave 2. I might not make it. This is getting fairly challenging. Just barely dodged that there. Wave 3. Not so sure I'm going to survive wave 3. I did lose. But let's just say, for example, I did survive when I received wave 4. After getting through that level, I would survive. Now, did I ever set up a code for that? It's pretty straightforward. I never actually broadcast. I never actually set up the broadcast for that. But the broadcast would just be, how many aliens did I have in the last round? The max was 24. So my previous total was 24 plus another 24 would be 48. So if you end up with 48 points and level equals 3, that means you won the game. And so it'll broadcast 4, but actually that's just the end of the game. And so that's all there is. That's all there really is to it. Clearly, it's expandable. There's a lot of ways you could expand on it. You could have more levels. You could have more enemies. You could have different types of enemies that show up in different levels. You could have different weapons. You know, your weapon could get more effective as the game gets more difficult. And there's a lot of ways to expand on this. This is just kind of the basic starter. So hope that was useful. See you next time.